I told you I wanted to share a little bit of what our leadership has been talking about together. And I'll put this out on Facebook and Twitter too. There's an interesting article I shared with the leadership just a couple of months ago. It captures some of the same things that I've seen in other places, but it was really a good way for us as leadership to get a handle on what we sense is happening at St. Luke right now. So I want to share it with you because this is a church-wide kind of conversation. This article is called Programs, Paths, and Healthy Church Growth, and the illustration in this article is this one here up on the screen. You see on the left there's a church full of different programs, all kinds of different really good things, filling up space in the church, and then on the right-hand side there's one clear path, and that's kind of all there is. So let me just read a couple paragraphs from this article. It's by a guy by the name of Tony Morgan, and he's the leader of, you'll love this company's name, it's called the Unstuck Group. Guess what he does for a living? He helps churches get unstuck. And Tony writes, I've observed something in healthy growing churches this year that I think is very important for church leaders. The church is experiencing the most healthy growth tended to have a discipleship approach in the form of a path, meaning they had thought through how they could best help people along in their journey following Christ and offer them a series of next steps. Here's what we do now, and when we're done with that, here's what we do next. By contrast, many of the churches I see that are in decline have an overwhelming number of programs available to attendees and even the community, but no cohesive path that helps people learn which steps to take and when. Now, Tony will go on to say it's not like programs are bad, and certainly having a discipleship pathway is not a magic bullet. There's no magic bullet when it comes to making disciples. There's no program or approach that you can take that will make it easy. It's always messy. The Holy Spirit is involved. But he does say it's a general truth as we look at the churches in North America, those that are growing in healthy ways tend to have this discipleship path that seems to work better than a church that's focused on maintaining their programs. It's not like they don't have programs, but the church ends up being structured around the programs. What becomes most important is keeping the programs running, not necessarily helping people take a next step in following Jesus. So Tony notices some of the differences. If you're in a program-driven church, then the win in your program is getting more people in your program. We've got people in a group that we identify, and then we get more people, and the more people we have, the more successful our program is. And if you got a bunch of those programs in your church, guess what everybody's doing? Trying to get you into their program so their program's successful. So you're being asked by 17 different people to join their little circle so their circle can get bigger, and there's almost a competition going on. In contrast, a church that's really structured around helping people take a next step, the win for your program is no longer getting bigger, it's helping people take that next step. So I might have a fairly small program, but if I'm effectively helping people take a next step in following Jesus, I think this is the best thing since sliced bread. We're no longer fighting against each other. We're kind of moving forward in the same direction. As we've been thinking about this, as we've been talking about what parts of that we see in our church, and there's this kind of dynamic, some of both of those dynamics I think are probably true at St. Luke right now. Some of both the discipling path and the program-driven church were probably in transition from being more programmatic to being more discipleship pathway-oriented. As we talked about that, I think here's a helpful way for us to get a handle on how we make that transition. So if you look on the right-hand insert under program versus path, you'll see another diagram, a diagram that's like these two churches. But if you go to the next slide, what if we imagined it as these individual ministries that all are setting their kind of own agenda, and they're good people doing good things. This isn't just at St. Luke. I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I'm simply saying what happens is when we're not saying clearly, here's where we as a whole see Jesus leading us, then it's up to everybody on their own to say, oh, here's where we see Jesus leading me and me and me. So they're good people who are aligned at the 10,000-foot level. Everything they do, everything we do here, there's not a single person doing a single thing at St. Luke that would not say they are not either following Jesus or discipling the nations. Everything aligns at the 10,000-foot level. But if you're actually going to be pulling in the same direction, then you need alignment at the ground level too. You need to be able to say, here's where Jesus is taking us at this unique time in our history with this unique group of people. And so you could see, though everybody's pointing in a different direction, the discipleship pathway is a little bit more like everybody's pulling in the same direction. Now, if you look at that church on the left, it certainly looks like there's a lot going on, and so it seems like there must be a lot of impact, and the church on the right looks a little bit empty, like there's not enough going on. So how do you evaluate those two churches next to you? You know how, you just don't know you know how to yet. So Rick and Kate, would you come up for a second and help me with this? We're going to, speaking of pulling in the same direction, Rick, would you take that end, and Kate, come under the rope here, and you're going to play a little tug of war. You remember tug of war, right? Okay, so you two are gonna, no, stand over. No, don't. You're not helping me. You're helping him. I appreciate it though. I like that. She's on my team. You can tell. So we're going to, if you guys are trying to pull me out that exit door, okay, you see that exit over there? You're going to pull in that direction. You want to pull in the same. Now, don't do it for real, because so if both of them are pulling in that direction, all of their force combined is pulling in the same direction, and they could probably pull me over if they really wanted to, right? So you know how tug-of-war works. Direction, and if you're pulling in the same direction, it's the same basic thing. Now, Kate, would you please take this end and go down those steps down there, okay? And Rick, you kind of go off the pulpit there a little bit. Okay. Now, you guys pull like you pull. No, pull down there. Pull hard. Okay, you're pulling. If we're pulling tug-of-war here, now what direction would I go? You don't know? Right there. That's where I would go. Their combined force was a lot less because they were pulling in different directions. And the other thing to notice is that instead of going out the exit door, I'm now going over here. So I've been pulled. It's not as much activity, and it's also going in the wrong direction. Thanks. Hey, good job. Kate, well done. Thank you very much. Strong girl. So this is a whole field. I tell you, you math geeks, this is the sermon for you, because not only are we doing fill in the blank, we're going to do some mathematics. So if you're not a math person, I'll wake you up in 2 minutes. But for the rest of you math type people, it's not that hard. Pay attention. Look at the bottom there. This is a field of mathematics called vector mathematics. So you see this diagram. If you had 3 different people pulling on that object in 3 different directions with different amount of force, in vector math it's called magnitude. You have both magnitude and direction. How do you figure out how to, 3 plus 2 plus 1, if you're just doing basic math, 3 plus 2 plus 1 equals what? Good job. So how do I figure out what 3 plus 2 plus 1 looks like if you're pulling in different directions? There's a way you can tell. It looks like this. It's that bottom right-hand corner. You simply go to the next slide for me so they can see. 3 plus 1 plus 2, you add the arrows together, and now go ahead and do this if you're playing along at home. Draw an arrow from the beginning of the first arrow to the end of the last arrow. And this is cool. You can try this later. It doesn't matter what order you put those 3 arrows in, you'll still end up in the same place. If you start in the same place, they'll go the same place. So it shows you that instead of being 6, you're actually a little over 4, and most importantly, you're being pulled in the wrong direction. Okay, you can wake back up if you're a non-math person, because now we have to figure out which of these 2 original churches is getting more done. The one on the left, where there's a lot of activity, but everybody's pulling in their own direction, looks like it's getting more done than the church on the right, where there's not a lot, but it's all aligned. But if you do the vector math, if you actually put all those arrows from the back of the arrow to the tip of the arrow, then it looks like this. And that's what that blue arrow there on the left shows you. It's actually not even as long as the arrow on the right. So although there's less happening, they're moving further down the path. And more importantly, in the church on the left, you're no longer headed out the exit door. You're headed over into this section over here. So you've been pulled off course. So the question becomes, how do we make this transition? If in some ways we as a church have fallen into the habit of pulling in whatever direction we think Jesus is leading us individually, how do we take a step forward? How do we transition from a church going in all kinds of different directions to one that's getting more done because we're all pulling in the same direction? Well, there's a couple options. The first option is to get from the church on the left to the church on the right. One of the things you can do is simply stop doing everything that doesn't align. Let's pick a direction. We're going that way, and anything that's not pointing in that direction, just stop. Don't fund it anymore. Don't do it anymore. Anything that's not pointing in this direction goes away. Now that might seem kind of harsh, but actually you'll get further down the path and you won't be pulled off course if you were to do that. It's not a bad option. It's just ripping the Band-Aid a little bit. I mean, it seems like you have to lose a lot to get that done. I think there's another way to do it. And you've probably guessed it already. So instead of getting rid of the things that don't align, you align everything you already have, so that you're able to say we're all pulling in this same direction, and now you're getting even further down the path than you would have otherwise. Every ministry, every group, when they're able to say, yes, we're pulling in the same direction, we're going together in the direction Jesus is taking us, we're headed down the same path, we're helping people take a next step in following Jesus, when we're all pulling in the same direction, that makes a huge impact and a significant difference. But remember, it has to be more than just a 10,000. It can't be just we're serving Jesus and loving the world. I mean, that's great, but that's not enough detail to say what's the mission and ministry of St. Luke Lutheran Church on Washtenaw Avenue in Ann Arbor, Pittsfield Township, Ypsilanti. It depends on where you are in the building, right? I mean, it's really kind of weird where Jesus has placed us in a very unique place. What's our mission? What's our goal? How do we articulate how to take a next step in following Jesus? What's the way we do that around here that's different and unique? I mean, look around. We're a unique group of people. God has given us eyes and ears and noses and armpits, and we're a unique creation. He's shaping us and molding us to be something beautiful and something unique, and we're not in control of that. But we can try to articulate. We can try to say, this is where we're going, and this is the next step we're taking together, not just as individuals. And that's not easy. So one of the things we're going to be doing as a major emphasis next year, one of the things we're going to spend money on and invest time in the next 8 to 12 months, one of the things we'll be presenting in our ministry plan and budget is some kind of visioning process. It's not like we've got no idea where we're going. It's not like we can't tell you what it means to follow Jesus. We've got something more like the 1,000-foot or 800-foot view. I mean, we're sneaking up on it, but it's not yet to the place where, I mean, could you articulate clearly what next step you need to take because you're a member of St. Luke right now? I mean, I'm not sure I could. I know some general ideas. I know where I want us to be growing, but how do we follow Jesus and how do we disciple the nations here at St. Luke? What's our strategy? What's our methodology? What are the tools we all know and use? And we don't quite have that yet, right? But we're going to get there. It takes time, it's not easy, and it takes congregational involvement. So we had a group of lay leaders, some local business leaders, some leaders from our church, people that know us well, and they sat down and they did some research, and there's a ton of different ways you can do vision as a congregation. There's some that cost like $5 in a box of donuts and you do it over a breakfast, and there's some that take 8 to 12 months and it takes multiple plane trips and outside experts. And the people that we asked to go do that research said two things. Number one, they said, we think this is a critical juncture in the life of St. Luke Lutheran Church. We're coming out of being a multi-site where our identity was shaped by this unity of 3 instead of 1. And now we're trying to figure out what it means to be a standalone congregation and how we're going to reach our communities for Jesus. It's a crucial point in our life as a church, and we need to invest in this vision process. We need to do more than $5 in a box of donuts. And the second thing they said was, we think we should have a senior pastor in place before we start that visioning process. So we don't have the final answers yet on that, but we know that's the direction we're going, is entering into a vision process. And we know it's going to cost us more than just a little bit. It's going to be an investment on our part. Because our vision is that we would engage the whole community, that you would have input in that too, that you would be able to help us discover how we follow Jesus around here and how we make disciples. And that whatever ministry you're a part of would be able to say, our mission here, whatever unique thing it involves, is also helping people take a next step. That's what we want. And that's going to take time and some outside expert help. The bad news is it's going to cost a chunk of change. The good news is you are exceedingly generous people. And here's how I know that. You remember, again, 6 months ago, we said we think in our 6-month budget, we're going to end up about $22,000 short for the fiscal year. That's what we said last December. We're going to end about $22,000 short, but you are generous people. We will have a generosity dinner and giving event, and I'm sure we can cover that $22,000. Two things happened. Number one, as of this week yet, we're anticipating not having any budget deficit for the end of the fiscal year. In other words, $0. So the $22,000 we thought we needed, we're not anticipating needing that anymore. So everything we raised at that generosity event can go towards next year's budget. Number two, we didn't raise $22,000. Our last count was just over $54,000 that you guys gave in support of the mission and ministry of St. Luke. That's an awesome thing. Thank you for your commitment. Yeah. So that means the burden of a campaign to get vision set in place can be removed from the budget. We've already covered it with that giving dinner, and we'll still have about $22,000 left over to go directly to the vision and mission of our next year's ministry plans. So we're moving forward. We need you to help us move forward, and you're already being used by Jesus to help move us forward. Thank you. So this was a lot about us together as church, but before we're done, I want to fill in just a couple more blanks. Because as we talk about what's going on next, it could end up feeling like it's all up to us, and I don't want that. So here are the last few blanks. First of all, as we follow Jesus, as we disciple nations, and we do it in a unique way that Jesus is putting it in us, number one, it's intended by Jesus to be a joy, not a burden. If it's up to you and me to figure out St. Luke's future and make sure we're doing it right, it will be a burden, friends. We will live in fear, and we will live in fear of taking a wrong step, and there will never be the end of the things we could have done better. But Jesus intends it to be a joy, not a burden on you. He's doing something extraordinary in your life as individuals and in our life as a church, and it's a joy. Second set of blanks, it's by grace, not by effort. It's by grace, not by effort. The pot is not the one working really hard to be shaped into a useful and beautiful vessel. So on the one hand, you don't get to tell Jesus what kind of pot you want to be, but it's also not up to you. Jesus himself in grace is shaping you and molding you to be more like him. He's the primary actor, and he's shaping a response in you. It's joy, not a burden. It's grace and not effort, because it's about Jesus, not about me. It's Jesus, not me. We're not asking what we as human individuals think we should do next. We're asking, what's Jesus speaking to my life? What response is he awakening in me? And we're asking that as a church. What next step does Jesus want St. Luke to take? And what kind of response is he shaping in us as a congregation? So for some of you, you came today confused or in doubt. You came carrying a burden of guilt or of shame. You come in fear or in confusion. You come in joy and expectation. As individuals, we come to this house to receive Jesus and what he gives us, to receive his body and his blood for the strengthening of our faith and faithfulness, to receive the forgiveness of our sins as individuals, whatever's going on in your life. And it's also true that Jesus is shaping us unique individuals with unique stories. That same Jesus, that same resurrection power is at work in our church, just as it's at work in your life. And as we follow him, remember, it's not about us. It's for the sake of others. It's for the sake of others. It's not for us. It's not about keeping St. Luke's doors open for another 20 years. It's about what Jesus is doing in us for the sake of others around us. Whew, that's a lot of talk about church. But I want to bring you up to speed on where your leaders are, on the direction we are beginning to see Jesus taking us. Because you're going to have to vote. You're going to have to pass ministry plans and a spending plan. And you're going to have to make decisions about directions. But we want to do that together. And we want to do it for the sake of others.